Good morning, everybody. I love having a small group because this should be just a conversation, right? I'm not here to speak to you. We're here to have a conversation together. But who am I? I graduated from the University of Michigan with a BFA, and I kicked off my career as a professional photographer. I realized that I have this need all the time to frame and reframe. And I'm always open to new information, and it continues to broaden my horizons and how I think, which requires me to reframe. I also learned about myself at a young age that I have an insatiable appetite for outdoor adventure. So soon after graduating from University of Michigan, I hitchhiked across the United States, not once, but twice. And that allowed me to engage with rancher in Oregon, where I saw them rounding up Mustangs for an auction, plantation owner in Mississippi, and really embedded in the old South of America, coming to Southern California, the beaches of San Diego. We have such a broad cultural mix in our world of the United States of America. So I was continuing to broaden my horizons and be very excited about the human condition and how we work together and how important it is to engage in conversations on a one-on-one basis and capturing that through photography. I've been married 32 years. I have 3 children that I've raised on the outdoors. I'm an ongoing lifetime athlete. I spend all of my time when I'm not inside doing things like this running and skiing and biking and swimming and backpacking. So we have a true appreciation of nature, and that's what is always inspiring me. And looking at framing and broadening my horizons with new people that I meet, yourselves included. I can't wait to have a conversation with each of you before I leave today. But it requires me to challenge the status quo, because what I knew walking in today will be different than what I know walking out this door later today. So I encourage all of you to always challenge the status quo. And I brought my 3 children up with that same thinking. And that may be the key element to reframe and to maintain relevance in the future. So thank you for introducing me. I work at Gensler. We're a design and architecture firm, 52 years strong. We have 47 offices, and Lisa and I, my colleague here, work in the San Francisco office, which when the fog raises, maybe we'll be able to get a view of it, but we're proud to be local, and at the same time we work globally. A lot of my experience is around thinking of how we develop brands. Some people come to us with products and know companies. How might we help you create an organization? How also might we help you create a brand and a system for yourself? And then look at every touch point and have a consistent story and narrative. And ultimately, many of these are through retail environments. And the whole language of retail is changing, and I know that's what we're going to talk about today. So with this session today, I thought I'd bring to you what we're calling the Experience Index. So many of you have a retail background, and you might be familiar with the old ways of measuring success, which would be an organizational model that requires real estate, analytics, retail model with HR and talent, a product that you're trying to develop and bring to the consumer. And you're successful if you are increasing foot traffic, if you're driving units per transaction, if you're increasing basket size. We don't do that anymore. And that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today, because we know customers want experiences. So price and product is not as important as customer experience. By the way, this deck that I'm sharing with you, I'm happy to share with all of the participants. So you can either take notes, but I'd love just to listen so we can talk about it. And because it's so small, I encourage you to just speak up, and we'll have a conversation as we go through. But you'll have access to this. There's a number of data points in here that I think are relevant, but while we're talking, I don't need to spend a lot of time on the data points. What we do know is 86% of buyers are going to pay more if they have a better customer experience. We also know that organizations are redirecting their investments to experience innovations. That's saying a lot. That is how we're establishing an organizational model. So retail isn't just the output of what you do, and I think you talked about how do we challenge the status quo and still maintain your Monday work responsibilities. We need to think differently, and it starts at the core of what we're doing. So how can retailers compete on experiences? We were looking at ROI. What's the return on investment? If I'm going to develop a flagship at Union Square in San Francisco, the lease that I have to cover is quite high. But we're shifting the whole conversation. The investment now is ROE. What's the return on experiences? So the purpose of physical stores has absolutely shifted to engagement and connection. And because of that, you're seeing brands like Sports Authority go out of business. You know, the difficulties with JCPenney's, Sears closing doors. I mean, these are American heritage brands that many of us were brought up on. So it's not that retail is dead, but we know that change is imminent. We know that, right? Change is imminent. So if you don't change, that's why you're fading away into the past. So we need to think in new ways. And it's not about being early adopters, because all this information is here for us to work through. It's about being informed and having a foundation of your business that's purposeful. Customers, why is it doing that? Oh, there we go. Will connect to design and value. So as we're thinking today about design thinking, and Lisa and I come from a design firm, you may say, well, I don't need to know about the design. I don't care. I'm about my product. My product is hero, whether it's a new electric vehicle, or it's the pants I'm wearing, or the apparel, or if it's home security. I mean, and it's all product, right? But it is about design, because how you think about a product is influenced by the space that you enter into. It's from the big space, from the environment around it, and the adjacencies to all the little things, the details that fall within. Perfect example. Design improves perceived product quality. So if you have a luxury product, maybe it's beauty or maybe it's apparel, you'll consider that based on the space that it's in. And we know that, and often the most beautiful stores are beautiful because of the price tag on the product. You need space to roam, you need to be able to think of things, you need an uncluttered environment, you need to not have visual camouflage. We call visual camouflage when you walk into what was an old Dick's Sporting Goods or Sports Authority, where the whole sight line is signage and graphics and sale and clearance and buy this and buy that and rounders of racks, and it's like, I can't make a decision. There's too much information. And then I might go to a Prada store, and there's this essence of focused on visuals. I can look at the product. All these things that's design, right? And that's where we come in, because we really understand that every element needs to be designed, including the organizational model. That's a design opportunity as well.
Can I ask you a question on that comes to my mind? So as I'm the person and I walk into Dick's, the first thing I look for is another person, because I don't know where to go. As you said, I'm overwhelmed. There's bigger pictures of Steph Curry than there are of anything else, which is good for him, bad for me as a consumer trying to find something. What experience are you finding is most successful when retailers, how do they approach the customer when they walk in the door? What should they be striving for?
I love that you asked that, because design is not only the physical elements, the product, how it sits, how you engage with it, and the space, the floor, the ceiling, the adjacencies, but it's the service. So service design is a key element. We can create the most beautiful environment, the most beautiful store, and you will have the premium product at the lowest price. But if you don't get the service element right, what does it mean? It's really key to have appropriate human engagement. And that requires one to think differently about a talent profile. There's a client that we're working with called Beta, and some of you, I know Stanley, we were talking about Beta earlier today, and we can get into that deeper, but Beta had a new retail paradigm. There's a few individuals that come from Nest, and Vibhu Norbe is the founder of Beta, and what they determined is there needs to be a space for makers, new product, that has yet to be commercialized, and it's not at Best Buy, it's not at Home Depot, they're products that you have never seen before, and products that you know are credible that you have seen, such as Nest or Home Security. And they've developed very quickly, 2 years now, we're on like the 4th iteration of this brand, a platform where their stores, Beta stores, are a very simple design engagement, where there's a single plane where you can look at their products so you're not confused by visual camouflage. Every product has an opportunity through a tablet where you can get basic information or deeper based on the video that's on there and give real-time feedback. Same time, there's sensors in this store, and they're giving back to those product makers who subscribe to be in the space real-time analytics. So I know that Renee engaged with this product for 18 minutes, and her feedback was, it's amazing, where do I buy it? And these other 10 products over here were 5-second dwell time. So something was wrong with that engagement. So what Beta has done is they don't make any product. They don't make any product. But they're successful at retail because they bring in other products and give back to the makers of those products information about how consumers engage in it. And this brings back to the service. I'm not going on a tangent, but how do they do that? Because the employees in the store know everything about every product in there. And that is how they hire. You must have full technology information on everything that we're displaying, from Faraday bikes to robots to children's toys to home security, and they can tell you more about it. Then the after effect is possibly a financial transaction. But that's not the key metric of the store. It's that you now have knowledge of a brand and the product, and then you will seek out how to purchase that. That's the after
That's
effect.
a key question, Jill. Can you actually buy the product in the store?
You can buy the product in the store, but you'll see when you go into the store that we didn't design it because there's no storage. It's not like a back room with hundreds of everything. It's very simple. It's very focused. You can get information and then go back and purchase the product. The stores are not set up to have you walk out the door with the product. Stanley.
I didn't feel a brand personality as part of the experience when I walked into Beta, and I'm just wondering if I missed it, or I would love to hear your perspective on that while we're on this topic of experience, because I didn't feel it.
So you didn't feel that Beta itself had a brand?
Exactly.
So like REI. REI is a great example where, well, they do make products, so they have licensed products, but they're an umbrella of brands within one footprint, right? So Beta ultimately is becoming an umbrella of brands under the Beta store. But what you will begin to see is a more consistent store experience through every Beta store, even though the products within may be different. So as we have the newest stores in Hayes Valley in San Francisco. I encourage you to go check it out. And what they're trying to establish themselves as a credible source, like the old school Good Housekeeping. We don't even have that anymore, but it ages myself. But it's sort of a stamp of approval that technologists and innovators know that the products that you will find in a Beta umbrella store are credible and ones that we promote. That is their brand ethos.
It speaks back to the quote that I shared earlier. It's a new technology meets an old idea. The Good Housekeeping seal of approval is a generations old idea.
Yeah.
But when you're incorporating these other visual elements that are more inviting to the consumer, such as everything's on one plane, it allows them to feel in control of the situation or engage in a comfortable place with someone knowledgeable. That's where the innovation crossroads happens, from my perspective.
Absolutely. Yes?
As you were talking about talent and hiring people who have this kind of expertise, I was just thinking how and how it sounds like retail is sort of moving towards catering towards a very high purchasing power customer. And I wonder what happens to customers who need that more bargain experience as the sports authorities and all that go out of business, and if that's something you guys are thinking about or working with at all.
Absolutely. So we see a big bifurcation where success is big box discount, because people, and we're going to talk a little bit about task in a minute, but people want to know that they're getting the lowest price for items that they need in their home. And then we're seeing premium products because there's selective purchases. There's a focus group that we understood that people are living in their cars, but still had the smartphone of choice. I also did a focus group quite a while back in New York City, in Harlem, around this fashion statement for a particular brand. Doesn't matter, of these big coats. There are these big down coats, and they're long and they're puffy. And the group that was purchasing them and leading them did without on so many other levels, but that was like their selective purchase, which was a status symbol. So what's happening is that all that in the middle is sort of finding its way. So why do you need to come to me if I'm in the middle? I'm not the best of the best, and I'm not the cheapest of the cheapest. And that's where experience comes in. So the major shift is we need to create human engagement through developing a unique brand experience. Mine's not yours or yours or yours. We are all uniquely our own brand. And that is critical for the success.
If I may just very briefly, for the audience's benefit, one of the speakers on our afternoon panel is CEO of a startup called Real, correct? Not the real, just Real. And but it's actually kind of this generation's version of layaway. So to Jill's point, this concept, and we curated that on purpose, is that this concept of the middle is withering. And you're either moving big box discount, but regardless of who you are, there's always that aspirational purchase. I'll repeat one of Clark's famous stories. He was doing ethnography in an inner city urban setting, and very low income, intercepts a teenage boy walking down the street with iPhone earbuds in his ears back 10 years ago when this was a big deal. Intercepts the kid assuming there's an iPod in the pocket, and it's just the end of the cord. So even at that end, even though he couldn't afford that, it was still the aspiration of that. And there were questions about his home situation, how he ate, but he found those headphones and aspired to that iPod. Please.
Yes.
Quick question. So what you're stating is that if someone were to, for example, walk into one of my stores and they were to see a backpack that they fell in love with, and they looked at it on Amazon and it was, say, $5 cheaper on Amazon. If I have a phenomenal design and visual merchandising display, are they more likely to purchase it in my store even though it's $5 more expensive than it would be on Amazon due to the experience?
Often, we do know that people are buying in store. More purchases, 95% of purchases happen in a retail environment, in a physical retail environment. That's really high. So even though we know that all the touch points need to have consistent storytelling, and I think 98% of all purchase decisions may happen online as one does research and does price comparison, but you will opt to buy in a store if the experience is positive. We do find, and there's data around it, that people are still enjoy buying in store. And a lot of it is impulse because of the experience. I know myself, I visit a lot of retail stores, and one of my partners, when we travel, we see retail, and there's a great Filson store in Seattle. If you go to Seattle, go to the Filson store. It's amazing. And we just had to buy something. I've never used what I bought there. It's sitting there. But it was such a great experience, I had to buy something because I wanted to support that brand and what they were doing. That does happen a lot. Clark.
Jill, I'm sort of asking this, Aaron, on your behalf, but also Gumps and even the A's. The growth of the circular economy is well documented. It's thought to be about a $7 billion a year category right now. Who knows how you measure that? But it seems like that's going to accelerate as we get into a more sustainable economy. How does that play in the experience economy that you're if that's even a well-formulated question.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I do know that we're seeing people willing to challenge the status quo and consider new formats. Formats that have never been done before will now be popularized. So if that's, for example, and these are things that aren't in place now, but some of our design thinking may be, what are services that we all require? If we drive, we have a driver's license. Who loves to go to the DMV? Nobody. Why? That's not a great experience. But how might the DMV, I mean, as an example, hypothesis, change the experience? Might there be a moving mobile truck that's on a corporate campus, on a university campus? How might we look at having services that we need more accessible to us? So I know DMV's not looking at billions, but it's really about looking at new formats for experiences. How might you buy a car? How many of us want to spend our Sundays going to car dealerships? You know, and the guy's going to come out and want to give me all this information that I don't need. We really need to challenge ourselves and understand, how do people want to make their decisions? What's the decision tree? And how might we create experiences that are formulated around that? So for buying an automobile, it may be a social decision. Often we're buying something because even of a brand recognition or a social status that we want, and we may want more social community engagement. So how do we do that? I'm not going to talk about the answers right now, but I think what we really need to do is challenge our current systems. And when you work for these companies, I mean, Gumps is an established, successful brand in San Francisco. They're amazing. But what would they do to engage a new consumer while maintaining their target consumer and their existing one? I think that's a lot of our challenges too. How do we grow our consumers as we have today? So I'm just going to move a little faster here. So best stores are selling experiences. I think we all agreed with that. How do we know that? So this experience index is what I'm walking you through. And at the beginning, I didn't talk much about it, but it's both qualitative and quantitative. We did 4,000 interviews across the nation. We had focus groups, and we actually shopped and shadowed many of these individuals as they were creating and giving us responses on how they enjoyed a restaurant, why they picked their favorite, what was that based on, and then what their rating was for new places that we were attending with them. And some of the things we're looking at is, I think you asked about big box and discount. So we do still frequent big box, pharmacy, department stores, boutiques, and specialty brands. But it's really all about the experience, and that's why you return. People are paying attention. They absolutely are. But our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. We want a lot of information quickly, and I don't want to go deep unless I need to have that information for a decision, right? So we need to meet customers where they are. I think the DMV example is, how do we go where the people are that need my branded service? Which doesn't mean that you're always going to develop a big physical environment and invite people to come in. You could do that. That may be your flagship. That may be your story. That may be what's unique about your brand. And how can you create other opportunities to bring your brands, your products, your thinking to the customers? And that's what I think we hopefully will talk a little bit about today.
So boutique and specialty brand retail, people are more likely to drive a further distance to get there as opposed to just shopping for convenience.
People are shopping for task. People are shopping for social opportunities. People are shopping for discovery. And they're also shopping for entertainment. So you may go to the grocery store because you're out of milk. But while you're there, you walked in for one thing and you come out with a basket full because you went, oh, I've never tried those cookies. That would be really good with the milk. And it's been a tough day. I'm going to get a 6-pack of beer too. Or there's a new product at the end cap and I'm going to gather that. So even something as simple as shopping for our food needs, we are always task oriented when we approach a store. I think I have data around that. It might be 49% or 50%. It's in one of these slides. And at the same time, we're going to return because we discovered something new I love the service, and I know I always want to go to that checkout counter, and maybe it's an opportunity for me to meet my neighbors or to meet people I've never met, and I want to do that too. There's a social factor in all of these. We know technology is ubiquitous. We know that, right? So we don't put technology into a store just to say, we need more screens, we need more technology, I need to have more computers. But you notice it when it's not there, because technology should provide a seamless experience. How might we leverage the information that we know? How might an app help us create a more seamless experience? How can my checkout be more seamless by not having a cash wrap? How might my sales associate tell me, not say, hi, how are you today, Eric? And oh, you're traveling to Iceland? You probably need this, this, and this, and you pull out information about Iceland or products, which is different than pulling up information on the website about a product. I know I'm going on a tangent here, but I think we use technology to aid that service component that we know is so important in a retail experience. How might that service individual pull up information that's relevant to your personal experience and help you? Not necessarily to make that purchase, but to just make you feel confident and secure that I'm your trusted partner. That's different than what you might have on your website. So that's how technology can be used. One way, there's a million ways to do that. And both Lisa and I will be spending time here. So Lisa's my colleague. She's sitting up here in front. So please, if we're not answering your questions now, you know, we're looking.
Well, it's good
to
you're not
engage
answering
with you.
questions, because we want to seed them and answer them throughout the day.
So talking about technology, everyone is doing everything everywhere. So I taught a class at University of Oregon on the MBA sports product, and they're laughing because they walked in and they're socially, they're engaging, and before we start, I see some on their phones and on their laptops and then talking, and then they're like, so you're listening to my speech, I know you're searching for that new shoe you want, and at the same time you're on Airbnb and Kayak booking a vacation. I know you're all doing it, right? So everybody is doing everything everywhere. So how do we create spaces around that and celebrate that? We have to embrace the blur. We have to embrace it. So Genzer designed this fabulous Adidas store on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And the ground floor of that space had no product when we opened the store. It was really celebrating the experience of a sports team coming through a stadium where it's concrete and stadium seating, and you get this emotional charge about what it would be like being on a football team running out onto the stage, right? A lot of what happens there is engagement where you're actively playing a sport. You know, there's balls and athletes that come in and play the sport, and at the same time you're doing it with your friends. It's social. Oh, and at the same time, I really did come in to buy the new Adidas running shoe. So touch point, touch point, touch point.
Can I ask it seems an interesting question is, how do we flip the human aspect of that? Like, and I just, as an example, like Starbucks had to just made it a corporate policy that you don't have to buy anything to use the bathroom. You know, that's sort of the foundational orthodoxy we're facing, and yet this is, like, if this guy walks out without buying that soccer ball, who cares? And that just wasn't, I guess that's, I'm speaking as an N of one, but I wasn't raised that way. So how do brands go about shifting some of those deeper held orthodoxies in consumers?
I think you measure success differently. So maybe the individual comes in and enjoys themselves and doesn't purchase a thing, and the next time they have free time, they say, let's return to fill in the blank, had a good time, and this sense of evangelism, this confidence in the brand. People want to follow brands that believe what they believe in. So if my experience is positive and enjoyable, I'm going to return. And the halo effect of that, whether you purchase something that day in that environment, you may, when you do purchase a product in line with that product architecture, you'll go back to that brand. So ultimately, whether you bought it in another city, at another place, or through their website or an app, you do go back to the brand, because that's how you build brand ambassadors. And that's not new, that thinking. You know, we've been doing that since we've been building brand for decades. But what's new is how we measure the success. It was only measured if you walked out the store with something in your hand. Now we realize you may purchase 10 times more items on your own time, in your own space, that's delivered, even if it's through Amazon. It's still buying from that product line. Social shopping is serious business. You can't avoid the social community. It's at your peril. As an athlete and a longtime runner, runners are very social, and we often meet at stores for trail runs, to gather together, to find someone at your pace, whether to pick up a race application, all the things. And I might try on shoes while I'm waiting for you, but not buy them there. But wouldn't it be great if you knew what I tried on? So when I went back to the Brooks website, you knew that you tried on these 3 models. Which one do you want to purchase? But I did it in a social environment. So we have many examples of some of our clients who didn't intend to be a social hub for their cities, but ultimately they did, because the space was so clean and inviting and had proximity that it became a landmark in those communities, and it became a hub. And they're known throughout as the place to meet, the place to have coffee, the place to do the unexpected. Cadillac, which is an American heritage brand, we all know that brand. We worked with them in a new location. You can go online and look at it. And the whole idea was to bring in a new audience, a younger audience to the brand. So we challenged the status quo of doing a Cadillac showroom, and instead created a lot of opportunities for social engagement. Community events are hosted there. The space is flexible enough. They host fashion shows. They have DJs come in and have music events. There's coffee, there's food and beverage element there, which, Eric, it was you. Yeah, so the food and beverage, people are so attracted to food and beverage. How might you partner with another brand to create a social environment for your customers? And that's been very successful. I have the data on that. It might be in this deck. About 1 million+ visitors have walked through the Cadillac showroom. The dwell time is 30 minutes. Even though they're not buying a car on the spot. But what they've done is people are re-engaging with that brand. A complete new paradigm shift. And that's what we're talking about, challenging the status quo. The funny thing is, boomers are less likely to report great in-store experiences. Now, I'm not sure if it's because boomers don't report it, or they don't value experiences as much. Right? Because we don't really know that. But we know experience at any age. You'll see here that millennials are more apt to report a positive experience than a boomer. It goes from 62% to 53%.
Jill, you mentioned boomers. I feel like I need to be responsibly spokesperson for my category. What's interesting about this, and when it came on the screen, was I realized I'm at a stage, I don't know if this is useful to me, a stage of life where I actually don't need much of anything.
Yeah.
Right? So the boomers reporting non-positive in-store experiences, I was thinking as you talked about this that I'm developing a whole practice of how to say no to really smart marketers, because I really don't need fun. So it's so interesting to me to realize that it perhaps is a boomer thing, where people are getting so smart about us. But what do you do with the person who...
Well, in a way, you're trained to say no to products, and no one's given you an experience.
And I recently bought a car, so you know
You're
that,
jaded.
That thing, right? But I feel like as an empowered consumer, one of my jobs has been to be a graceful client.
Well,
That's
that's
a persona
interesting,
if
because
I
we
ever heard
find that more people have social purpose. Right? So it may be that you don't need to acquire more things. But what few people are reluctant to acquire great experiences. If I were to ask you, if we're just talking socially about telling something, often your memories are around experiences. It's around how you felt when you did something. Whether it was a boss that you had that always supported you, or a vacation that you loved. You know, you may have a visual representation. I'm a very visual person, particularly as a photographer. I always think visually, but it's really about like what, when I was looking at that, like how I felt. The human experience, we all want to feel good. So you may not continue to acquire things, but you will, I'm sure, confident that you'll continue to acquire experiences. And the ones that are positive, you'll be attracted to want to repeat. So Patagonia is a brand that I'm sure we've all heard of, and you know their ad was 18 months ago, 2 years ago, where it's, don't buy more things. That's really counter to product development, because you want your products you'd used to have a life cycle, so you'd be forced to return to replenish that product.
And can I capture that example to reinforce one of your points? So how did Patagonia measure? You talked about new measures of success. How are they? What was their measure of success in that instance?
I don't have the exact data, so I'll recall, but I
generalize.
would say their unaided brand survey increased incrementally, because people, like I said, want to believe in brands that believe what they do. And gosh darn it, Patagonia has a following. You can trust that they have the social purpose, and they are creating products that have my core philosophy in life about not just creating things to create it. They're sustainable, they're upcycling, recycling, repurposing, all of those great items. So brand ambassador, evangelist levels have increased significantly. I'd have to go back. The last data point I had was about a year ago, and I'm sure it's changed. So I don't want to throw out a number, but you could search that yourself.
I'm curious, so if what you're saying about people being more willing to pay for experiences holds true, I'm curious if there are brands that are playing with the concept of actually having customers pay for a retail experience, and whether anyone's thought about that.
Absolutely. Have you been to the Ice Cream Museum?
Yes.
No, it's not on my list.
Yes. Tell me. No, because
Talk about that.
Well, so you get free samples all the way through, and then at the end you can buy ice cream. And like I just went through like an hour of keeping my 4-year-old away from cotton candy, and now you're trying to sell me. But no, so it's a great experience. So you have to buy your tickets months in advance, and even if you have a ticket, they queue you up outside, and you go through all these very curated and thoughtful visual artistic experiences throughout, and they pair them with food, in this case ice cream or cotton candy or popsicles, and then when you get out, you know, it's all Instagrammable obviously, and then there's a massive hot tub full of plastic sprinkles. Very not my first thought was there's no way they can recycle all this plastic, and and they have these air showers to blow yourself off with all the plastic sprinkles off. I don't know if I've touched on what you want, but then you go out and there's an area with like a gift shop, a ping pong table, you can buy ice cream, and then there's just swings you can take, like perfectly made for boomerang. I don't know so that was my experience. What was I supposed to experience?
Well, and you had to pay before you went in, right?
Yeah.
You paid just for the experience.
Yeah.
You didn't pay because you're buying ice cream preloaded. You paid to go to the experience.
Right.
So, and that's been hugely successful, and they sell out because it's limited. So we still are attracted by the exclusivity of things, right? People like that. And people want social experiences. And there's been multi-generations that are walking through those spaces. Perfect example. Are you from the Oakland A's?
Yeah, I am.
So we're looking at fan experiences. What do fans want when why would I go there when I have my monster screen at home, right? So we need to give them a reason to go there, right? How might that social community be as or more important than sitting in a seat? I think it's how we design, it's about designing the spaces. So I can interact with the play that's happening, but not just from my seat. That interaction could happen while I'm waiting for a beer, what are the F&B amenities that I provide? How can I make purchases? How can you it's multimodal. How can I go there for an activity and have experiences accessible to me during my 3 hours, 2 hours, 5 hours for some games, right? That are going on, so I want to repeat that and come back. And every time I come back, there's a new discovery. There's something else that's going on. Or it's rich enough that I wasn't able to engage in all of the experience touch points that were designed. Whether it's visually reading, as it consuming, how I consume, the amenities are there, what my seating experience is like, is there something else going on in another location that's targeted for the personas, the profile that we've identified. It comes back to, and I didn't even touch on this, but the core thing, and how could I forget this? You have to have a target audience and know your audience. There has to be research, know who you're speaking to, understand that person so it can be curated. All of these examples I'm giving are very curated. You can't be all things to all people all the time because it doesn't mean anything. We're all looking for meaning, and hopefully we'll find another word for this today, authenticity. I know it's overused, but it still means something, and it's unique to that brand. So that's critical. There's a question right behind you. Is it? Yeah, hi.
It's great to have all this talk about having this really special experience in store, but I'm curious what some insights are around how to get people into that space. So, I don't know, is that going to come up or?
Absolutely, it's important. So there's like 5 E's. There's things that happen before I enter the store. It's the attraction and the intrigue. So that's how you use all the multiple touch points. So your flagship or your physical environment may be one touch point, but you probably also have a workplace. There's also maybe a website. There may be pop-up or other formats that are around your brand. Who do you work for?
I'm at the North Face.
Oh, I know the North Face very well. I've done a lot. I come from the outdoor industry. Decades working with the outdoor industry. So how we attract them there is really about telling a story. There has to be a consistent narrative that's focused, and the North Face has so many different brands. So whether you're doing the outdoor urban, which is different than your technical and aspirational, those two different. So like, Uli Steck and Tommy Caldwell are a different customer, but they're inspiring your weekend warrior customers. So how you speak to them can be customized, but it has to have one brand narrative that's consistent. So why am I buying North Face instead of Marmot or Patagonia or Outdoor Research or all your other competitive brands? It starts with a story.
I was just going to kind of add to that it's this notion of belief systems and buying into that belief system, whether it's Patagonia, North Face, or any of these other brands. If it aligns with your internal belief system and kind of your purpose and what you're about, then you're more likely to navigate towards those brands and that purchasing.
Absolutely. The first thing we do when we work with all of our clients is help them, if they haven't already, establish their mission and values. I know North Face has one. So how do you put that up and have that be your criteria for all your decisions? For example, Gensler, where we work, it's using the power of design to improve the human condition. And we ask ourselves that every day. We signed the Paris Agreement. We're committed to looking at sustainability through all of our work, and that's not just about selection of materials, but it's about how we tell a brand story. What's the life cycle of the work that we do, and how does a story and narrative consistently work through that? So you have to look back at what is your mission and what are you doing, and don't lose sight of that, because each of you, who you work for, or even in your own internal brand, should have a mission that's unique to you.
Just to add to that, I think when people say how has digital transformed retail, digital has transformed retail,
Okay.
almost elevating physical into a new reality, right? So digital is really good at task-based activities and at creating a new aspiration, right? It's kind of like two ends of the spectrum of retail, and then what happens in the middle, the physical, has become this sort of social and entertainment hub for people. So instead of being the place where you purchase something, like Jill has shown, it's the place where people gather. And so in that essence, it's become important in a different way.
I guess I'm just wondering how you use digital to encourage that physical experience. Like, I see the website, like the whole e-commerce world at North Face is very, very separate from
Yep.
retail. So how do they work together to encourage the consumer ultimately to go have that face-to-face experience with the brand in a brick-and-mortar setting?
That's it right there. I think you just said it. How can it tell the same story? So what you're doing on your website isn't exactly what I'm seeing in the retail stores. And your standard, not trying to be critical, but we really need to, is that a consistent story? Is your Comme des Garçons store in San Francisco the same experience that in a standard North Face store, the other one at Union Square? Absolutely not. They're worlds apart. I don't know what to expect when I'm going in there. Perfect. Shopping is still shopping. I still want to shop. I know that we spend all this time on e-commerce, and that's in that building over there, and my retail team is over there. And oh gosh, we never thought to talk to each other. Why is that experience in the store completely different than what I'm seeing online? Because we're not talking to each other. The narrative is not consistent. Yes.
So I think Catherine asks a good question. I'm a founder of a retail tech startup, and we're kind of battling the same stresses of how do you bridge online, offline.
Yeah.
Imagine if this was an Amazon team, right, discussing the future of retail. We all heard the launch of Amazon Prime Wardrobe just 48 hours ago.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about what is that team thinking? What are they projecting? What are they betting on? Is this kind of the final nail in the coffin of people going into stores to buy clothing? What's kind of going through the minds of a monolith retailer like Amazon, launching Prime Wardrobe?
Yeah.
And literally giving us a choice to never go into the store, right?
I have an opinion.
Yeah.
And actually, I want you to save that question.
Okay.
And not that we can't answer it now, but Kira will be speaking on Stanley's panel, and she will jump out of her chair.
Okay.
So I'm planting you, okay? You're my plant.
Yeah.
You're my plant.
I love that question. We should leave it at the end of the day, too, to see if our answer's different. If I had that answer, be $1 million question, we'd be charging a lot more money to get in the door.
So this is a question for you, Jill, because you come from the world of physical
Yeah.
spatial experiences. So it'll be good to get your perspective at some point.
I'll give you a very short answer, though, because I do want to address it. So we have worked with Amazon many times. We actually, I won't put this in writing, but I'll say it verbally. We designed their first Amazon bookstore in Seattle at University Village, which was a big buzz around the whole PR story. Have any of you been to that store, the University Village Amazon bookstore? Okay. It was their first physical retail environment, right? And it was total counterintuitive to other bookstores because Amazon really pushed a lot of those bookstores out, right? They acknowledge that. So a very short answer is what Amazon is doing is they're absolutely challenging the status quo every day and with every decision, right? And they're understanding what their differentiator is. So as they're building this online community that's monstrous, it's global, it's viral. At the same time, they went back to understanding they need physical environments. And they built a retail store that's hugely successful. They've now rolled that out, and their differentiator is they have ratings and reviews on books. No one else had that. They're very clear on what they're doing and what the output is. So Amazon Prime, even at Whole Foods right now. Have you been at Whole Foods lately? How they're telling that Amazon Prime story to get you to engage in Amazon at checkout and as you shop through the store. I mean, I'm not going deep on any of these, but see, these are the things. Amazon has a very clear narrative. They're gathering data all the time, and they're using it back even in physical environments.
The thing I would add about the bookstore that they do is also they price match. If you're
yes.
if you're a Prime member, you get price match, because that was always the big knock about buying in a bookstore. I knew I could get it cheaper on Amazon, and they'll price match. So you bring that up, that's interesting, because I was at a conference in New York earlier this spring, and that was I saw their initial launch of the Echo Look over a year ago, and that was really my inspiration to put this whole thing together and bring all you here, was this idea that, like, if Amazon has a 3D scan of my body, why do we need retail? And it became this bifurcation between Amazon can commoditize that distribution chain. If I'm flying to New York, I don't even need to pack a suitcase. Amazon has my measurements. I'll ship it to my hotel according to the weather. But then what do I do with all this other time and pent up energy in my life? And I still crave experiences as a person. And this is when we talk about design thinking as human-centered design, that's the essence. Technology goes away, but the human experience is what still exists.
Which is just this, expand the experience. If you do one thing well, add 2 other things to it, right? I'm going to go through the rest of these pretty quickly because I know there's a lot of conversations we need to do, and hopefully this sparked information. I didn't answer any of your questions deeply, but I'm here all day, so let's get into that. But the right level of organization also makes a big difference. So how you set up your organization to create these experiences is instrumental, right? You have to have the right people assigned and focused on the right things. So I think I'll land and leave on this. You have to design a complete experience. So no longer are we looking at basket and foot traffic only, but we're looking at interaction, expectation, and space. And within that, if I'm going to the store for milk and I come out with other things, I went for task, but in that same space, you need to think about, is there a social opportunity? Can I meet my neighbors or new people? Am I aspired? Is there aspiration? Entertainment. We're all so busy in our lives. Make me happy. Entertain me while I'm there. And discovery, because I want to learn. I have information at my fingertips all the time with all the technology, so I want to learn. I have this sense of discovery all the time. These 5 intentions are critical to getting a high rate of experience and sending people out the door with a strong emotional connection to your brand. I will give you all this. I think they have access to this.
Yep.
You're welcome to share this. But these are the things, and particularly like North Face, ask yourself this. In every experience, whether online or in a brick and mortar, do we have these 5 intentions? And the last of these, I think, we won't go through because we're running out of time.
We can come back to it. That's the best part.
Yeah.
We don't have to. It's not over. It's
But
just
manage,
a pause.
then exceed your expectations.
Cool. Can you leave the previous slide up for just while we're break? Next one back. Perfect. So we're going to take just between now and 10 o'clock, go to the restroom, talk about what you just heard, engage us. We'll be back at 10, and we're going to start into the design thinking work. But I want to thank you so much, Jill, for kicking us off. This is fantastic.
It was so fun. Thanks. Thank you.